I'm not asking you to solve our domestic discussions. I am asking you to leave a light on so that we can find our way home.
And this is where I think us saying that, well, let's go for a halfway house, let's go for something a wee bit snippy, arm's length. No, let's be clear and full-throated about what it is we want. We want EU membership. We want to be a normal European state, like all the others, doing our bit, contributing what we can and benefiting from that solidarity. Yeah? So I don't think EFTA as a stepping stone solves any problems that aren't going to be solved by EU membership. We want EU membership, we want full EU membership, and the opt-outs and the arm's length, rather sniffy approach the UK took over the decades. We won't have that. We're liberating Ireland. We want to be at the heart of things.
Send a message loudly and clearly by voting SNP on Thursday that we do want to stay in the European Union. We want Scotland to be an independent, a European nation. We do want to stay in the European Union. We want Scotland to be an independent, a European nation.
Chocolate, I'm not asking you to solve our domestic discussion.
Sometimes I really do have too much spare time, but apologies if you hear a bit of weird noise in the background. Just as I decided to start recording, the council boys have started to cut the grass near my house, so that's typical. But I'm not going to spend too long talking about the absolute cringe fest that is on full display when it comes to the talk of Indy Ref 2, the blatant fucking LARP for what it is. You know, my position has never changed on what I believe this is all about, what they're all about, and it's just becoming more and more self-evident, really. You know, they just don't really hide it at this point. They've spent so many years trying their damnedest to conflate independence with EU membership to the point now where they can just come out right and say it. It's all about the EU. Now, there was a point in time a few years ago where Thin Lips, as I've said before, was on record as stating that she opposed a second referendum in the event of a yes win, meaning she opposed the idea of us having a secondary referendum to rejoin the European Union, instead favouring the idea of us having a double referendum in effect. So a yes vote would have meant that we would automatically have voted to rejoin Europe. It was a no-brainer, essentially. Times have obviously changed somewhat. She's relatively silent on the matter, and it would not fucking surprise me at all if the plan now is to have a referendum on independence, simply have it based on independence, and then of course that will then entice the people that want to rejoin the European Union, as well as the people that want independence but don't want to rejoin the European Union, to join forces yet again, obtain their independence. Then Thin Lips will start a bullshit, and hey presto, eventually we'll end up getting back into the EU, because that is all this is about. It's all it's ever been about, as far as I'm concerned. So either way, she can go fuck herself. You know, I'll never forgive them for making me, I should say, vote against my own country. You know, that's by and large just fucking ridiculous. But you know, it has to be said. I think there's a bit of hyperbole at play here. Hyperbole, whatever you will. Tomato. They keep talking about independence as if it's a no-brainer next year, as if there's a referendum set in stone, cast iron mandate, as they keep reminding us all. You know, you can't just fucking win every election with the same promise, knowing damn well that the promise that you are promising can't be acted upon, and then claim that you got a mandate. I recall a few years ago that they were actually trying to imply that they had several mandates. It's not how it fucking works. Nonetheless, nobody's come out at any point and said that the referendum they're talking about is actually going to take place. That's why I'm not going to give it that much attention at the present time. It's really just to talk about some of the shit that we're having to endure already. You know, Alan Smith, of course. I mean, fuck me. Oh god. So there's I came across this last night, and he's done a wee piece in a paper. I don't know which paper. I can't remember. I've had this tab open for about an hour. But straight away, the first fucking paragraph. We have to endure the absolute bile that is this LARPing movement for what it is. You know, they just hijacked the desire for independence, hijacked the independence concept in order to get what they fucking want, and it's so blatant at this point. As this dickhead, he says at the top, he goes, "It was good to be back in Aberdeen, speaking in person about my favourite thing, independence in Europe." I mean, I know that he has to kind of write his article to appeal to the people that he intends to, or the people that will inevitably read it. But let's be honest, there's no way, it doesn't even make sense, first and foremost, that this is his favourite thing to talk about. Independence in Europe. Okay, I believe you. I mean, we all know that that's your desired outcome for Scotland, is to rejoin the European Union, because you want to spread our cheeks, metaphorically speaking. You know, they're the only party I can fucking think of that are actually determined to have us back in a union where we'll have our, quote, using their words here, our sovereignty pooled and play our part to the fullest extent. We want to mimic Ireland. And they always go on about Ireland's economic success, but what they never tell you about in regards to Ireland is the ethnic makeup now of the country. Seems to be getting relatively diverse these days, but that's a good thing, I suppose, if you're all about that global citizenship, you know. Embrace the diversity, because it's an enrichment, it's a strength. Aye, of course. It's remarkable, because then in the next breath you'll have the likes of Mary Black, you know, the eagle-eyed Mary Black, implying that the Tories are all fascists and Nazis. And she'll stand down in Parliament in Westminster and imply that the Tories will do many an atrocity, many an evil thing for that sweet, sweet GDP. But yet, simultaneously, the SNP will make the same fucking arguments pertaining to GDP when they try to compare what we could look like. We could be like Ireland. Look at their economy. For that sweet, sweet GDP. Huh? Oh God, but it's just that fucking quote. You know, independence in Europe. I mean, it's an oxymoron for a start. I just wish that these individuals would drop the larping. You know, call it what it is. This is an EU movement. That's all it's ever been about. If these people really give a shit about independence, then why the fuck do they spend the best part of 3 to 4 years trying to stop Brexit instead of prioritising independence? And then ask yourself this: had the 2016 referendum been reversed, or had the UK voted to remain in the EU, would we be talking about independence right now? Nah, we fucking wouldn't, would we? And the only reason that it's now getting a mention again, as of now, is because there's a bit of momentum. And obviously, Thin Lips has to continue to do what she's done for the longest time. And that is to, you know, pacify the people that are stupidly still voting for her after all this time on her false fucking promises. You know? So anyway, let's see what else there is. It has to be said, there is one Twitter account that's got to be the epitome of cringe when it comes to all things independence at present. And that is the the movement, or that I touched upon in a video the other day. The one that started off in Aberdeen. Oh, Jesus. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Alan Smith continues. He says that, I worry that times over the past few years, more of the independence discussion has revolved around process rather than why independence is best for Scotland. None of you people make an argument as to why independence would be best for Scotland. Now, speaking as somebody who I've said before, there was a time when I was in favour of independence. I voted for it in 2014. And in an ideal world, I would vote for it again. But that ideal world would consist of none of the problems that we see at present, whether that be boatloads of migrants, whether that be fabricated crises, such as your cost of living, such as your climate crisis, etc. It would be an ideal world where we would tell the UN to fuck off, the WHO to fuck off, and we would go it alone. And we would not have any of the issues that we see at present that are affecting the vast majority of the Western world due to fabricated crises and United Nations fucking policy. But, you know, all these individuals have ever done was put independence in the back burner after using it as a means to win elections and simply keeping it there as a plan B if they couldn't stop Brexit. And that's what fundamentally really irritates me about this, because sometimes you will hear them in Parliament making an argument against the Union, or Boris Johnson's done this and he's done that, Tory this, Tory that, Tory this, Tory that. But by and large, that's all very well and good, but it falls on deaf ears as far as I'm concerned, when fundamentally the only reason that you're saying it is to convince people that are on the fence, when fundamentally you know yourself that deep down it means fuck all, because your intention is to rejoin the European Union. I just do not for the life of me understand why anybody would openly and willingly wish to rejoin that. You know? We should have been able to leave the European Union on amicable terms without any of the shit that occurred after fucking 3 years. Kind of showcased that democracy's a fucking farce, if you ask me. It wasn't just the SNP that were involved in that, but they're not blameless. Free trade deal of sorts should have been agreed upon that benefited both parties End of fucking story. But fundamentally, the European Union couldn't be seen to have somebody leave amicably because it might encourage others to do so. So there's their excuse. And as for the people in Westminster, well, they had no intention of letting us leave properly in the first place. They didn't want us to leave. Yeah? So that was the first major mistake. But that's what should have happened. Because at the end of the day, even a couple of months ago, that guy Verhofstadt was at his shit again, talking about or hinting towards the idea of removing vetoes. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. And then you hear the argument from time to time that the UK has some sort of special status within the European Union. Well, that video that I played at the start there, Alan Smith is on record. The SNP themselves are pretty much on record. They're just going to lube Scotland up and get pumped rotten by fucking bureaucrats. That's their intention, but Alan Smith said it himself. That they have no desire to have that sort of agreement that the UK once upon a time had. Oh, no. We want to play our parts. You know? Live up to those obligations. Like good global citizens. You know, they're actually willing, they're openly desiring, salivating at the concept of going back into the Union in order to become subservient. That is truly remarkable to me, that a party would be willing to do that. You know? So don't fucking sit there and LARP as if you're an independence movement. You're anything but. It's a fucking joke, an embarrassment if you ask me. You know? They're on record saying that we'd have our sovereignty pulled. They're on record saying that they would implement every EU policy, align our policies to match the EU's. They wish to rejoin the EU because fundamentally it's better for us to come together in times of crisis to tackle global issues. So we need to be in the EU to tackle the non-existent man-made climate crisis. Oh yeah. We need to be in the EU so we can all implement the Sustainable Development Goals together. Wow, what a fucking shock. Yeah, okay. And remind me again why we need to be in the EU for those things if it wasn't for anything other than the fact that they wish for Scotland to become part of the global cabal. You know? It's a fucking disgrace, really. What's happened? IndyRef 2 needs initiatives which will recapture the energy of 2014. You're not going to recapture the energy of 2014 because by and large it's a completely separate fucking argument that you're making here. Despite your best efforts to pretend it's an identical one. You know? Well, let's see what this guy has to say, Mr. Specky with his arms folded. Yeah, is this to make him look really intelligent? There better be some fucking hot takes in here, eh? Oh god, well that's a great start. Socialists and Scottish dreams. Fuck me. Oh dear me, man. Let's see what's said. Everywhere you look, evidence is mounting that Scotland really will get a second chance to vote for its independence before the end of 2023. Where are you getting that information from, like? Because the only people that have implied that that's going to be the case is the SNP themselves. I haven't seen Boris Johnson say that's going to happen. I haven't seen anybody at Westminster say that's going to occur. Nobody's fucking said that. The only people that have said that is the SNP. You know? Oh, we're putting 20 million aside for the non-existent referendum that's occurring next year. And they're applauded by their faggot fans. They're applauded by the national newspaper that seems to simp to high heaven for the SNP. Relentlessly. You know? This week we learned that the Scottish Government has set aside 20 million to pay for the votes, and at the weekend hundreds of independent supporters attended an inspirational conference in Aberdeen. Ah yeah, and I wonder why it took place in Aberdeen. Could it be the fact that Aberdeen is obviously getting shafted at present due to the fact that we're moving away from fossil fuels from carbon? You know? So you need to go to Aberdeen above all else to try and get them back on side properly, promising them all these good green jobs. The transition phase, a socially just transition. You know? Well, I wonder why they picked Aberdeen. But anyway, an inspirational conference. You mean a fucking bag of cringe? An absolute bag of cringe. And a poll shows that a permanent Westminster bloc and another referendum was supported by just 31% of Scots. Well, that's grand. But the reality of the matter is that still does not prevent Westminster from doing just that. As we're constantly reminded by the SNP and the media, especially in Scotland, nobody in Scotland likes Westminster anyway. We keep getting parties that we don't vote for, etc, etc. So what fucking difference would it make? Really? To Boris Johnson? In a hypothetical scenario where he is forced to block a referendum? And this is what they're relying on. They're still doing the same shit that they were doing prior to previous elections. oh well, we made you a promise, so it's not our fault. If that promise can't be fulfilled, you need to place your blame elsewhere. Well, maybe you should stop making fucking promises when you know damn well that you can't act upon them. You know? Fuck me. You can tell that the prospect of Indy Ref 2 is solidifying, but see, when people say this, I mean, what do they mean? Do they actually mean independence, or do they mean European Union membership? Because this is what's happened here. There's a blatant conflation that's taken place for years, courtesy of Nicola Dunlops and the SNP in general. And as a result, when people talk about independence, I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. Because for the vast majority of them, it inevitably ends up being the case that they're really talking about the EU, but they don't want to drop the term Indy Ref 2. I wonder why that is. Some of them are just delusional and believe that you're actually independent in the EU. Well, that's all very well and good, but you know, what good is that without your sovereignty? You know, what good would that be in Scotland with our government turn hell bent on being shafted and becoming subservient? You know, for fuck's sake. So anyway, I want to get up to this paragraph here. I'm not reading all this nonsense. Where is it? Where was the socialist section? Socialists and Scottish Greens were just some of those who took part. This at last was the Yes movement getting down to the serious business of discussing the ideas which will shape the Scotland we will reinvent with the tools independence will give us. Right, first and foremost, why the fuck do they continuously talk about creating a socialist Scotland? Who wants to live in a socialist Scotland apart from progressives? And yet Alan Smith's got the audacity, the temerity to say that they don't have the monopoly in independence. Ah, well, you kind of do, don't you? You know, they continuously go on about the Scotland that we intend to build, that we're trying to build. You know, what the fuck are they talking about? So it's just cringe. You know, really selling it here. The fact of the matter is that you've got the SNP and the Green Party favouring quote-unquote independence, when in reality they just want to be part of the EU. I should really tell you all you need to know if you're on the fence, really. You know, just kind of look beneath the veneer of shit that you will be subjected to in regards to the revisionist history and the bullshit, etc. Look beneath that and look what the fuck's really going on here. I have a pang in my heart for those marches which attracted steadily increasing numbers before COVID, made it disappear, to continue to hold them. I still remember the thrill of Dunlops telling a packed George Square at a national rally that Indy Ref 2 would be held in 2020, plans which also fell victim to the pandemic. Oh, that's bullshit as well, is it not? That's fucking bullshit. Another lie, because at the end of January of 2020, Dunlops came out and pretty much let slip that there was a high chance that the referendum that she'd been insistent would take place in 2020 might very well happen after the next election, which was taking place in 2021, despite the fact she spent the entirety of her campaign in 2020 talking about the fact that it had to happen, no, in 2019, sorry, that it had to happen in 2020. Fast forward to the end of January, and she acknowledged that it might not fucking happen, and it might be after the next election. And then you fast forward a few months, and then the COVID hysteria takes place. And all of a sudden, everybody that was told in January that that there was a high chance they wouldn't see the referendum that year, they seem to have forgot that conveniently. And now they all buy into this notion that Dunlops was going to hold that referendum if it wasn't for that big bad pesky coof. It's remarkable to me. Do these people intentionally ignore fucking history? Or are they so embroiled in this mind virus that is Indy Ref 2 that they really cannot fucking remember things for what actually occurred? It wouldn't surprise me, considering Dunlops revises history and nobody ever challenges it on that. He believes there will be a place and time for independent supporters to gather in their thousands to show the scale of support for independence. Oh, fuck off. Is this what you'll all be waving your sultans with the EU stars splotched around the place? It's desecration, if you ask me. Fucking hell, man. Call it for what it is, but they never do, as I said.